Thank you. Um, Thank you very much, Rosemary. It's a pleasure to be here to pay tribute to Mother Jones and all who um, went with her and those who follow in her wake. Um, I I have obviously a connection with Cork because I studied at University College Cork for 5 years, and one of my subjects was certainly labour history, which has always been an interest of mine. I remember going with you to Mother Jones's grave in at the Miners Cemetery in southern Illinois about 18 months ago, I suppose it was, maybe 2 years ago, and it was a remarkable eye opener for me because I hadn't really known the story of Mother Jones, even though I had studied labour history and studied the Irish in America. Sadly, Mother Jones's story had not entered into my um, focus. So it was a revelation to see. And what impressed me most of all was the scale of the monument that the miners built in the cemetery in honor of memory of Mother Jones, because it reminded me of, say, in Ireland, in Dublin, the great monument at the grave of Daniel O'Connell, the liberator from the early part of the 19th century. The scale of the monument really gave me reason to understand more fully how important Mother Jones was to America and to American labor in her day. And I think and the other thing that I found amazing about it was that the monument was built during the depths of the Depression, when clearly miners and others were struggling to make ends meet, and yet they were so determined to make sure they honored their this heroic figure from the labor movement that they put up this extraordinary monument over her grave. For me, Mother Jones is representative of the millions of Irish people who came here during the 19th century, who crossed the Atlantic, many of them in conditions of great deprivation. And when they arrived here, they weren't always warmly welcomed, because there were those in America at that time who saw Irish immigrants as a threat to established mores and established traditions here in the United States. And the Irish had to battle for everything that they managed to achieve in the decades and the century that followed. So Mother Jones, for me, is a representative of that great exodus from Ireland to the United States, and she's an example. And of course, the Irish, when they came here, they fanned out and they became prominent in different walks of American life, and including, of course, in the labor movement, where, for obvious reasons, the Irish were strongly represented, because they were the ones who were doing the hard jobs in mines and building and digging, laying railways and digging canals and so forth. So she's a representative of that tradition, a tradition that I'm proud of because of the achievement those people had. And indeed, one of our leading poets, Evan Boland, who died during the week, once wrote a poem called The Emigrant Irish. And she made the following point. She said, this is a line from the poem: "They would have thrived on our necessities. What they survived on, we could not even live." And then she said that their hardships parceled in them patience, fortitude. And when I read that poem during the week in memory of the late poet Evan Boland, I immediately thought of Mother Jones, patience, fortitude. I mean, fancy being a victim of three great disasters in the space of 30 years, by which I mean the Great Famine in Ireland, which whenever she left Ireland, we don't really know, but whenever she left, it was surely as a consequence of the Great Famine, because it was either during or after the Great Famine she would have left Ireland. And then, of course, she suffered unimaginable loss, a husband and 4 children dying in a yellow fever epidemic. And by the way, traveling around America And for example, I was up in Leadville in Colorado, there near Denver, last year, and there are 2,000 Irish miners buried in unmarked graves in the cemetery in Leadville, and they were mainly victims of yellow fever, which swept through the camps, the miners' camps, and most of those, I think the average age of those who are buried in the Leadville cemetery, most of whom come from Cork, by the way, from West Cork, is 22 years of age. So they died very young ages, and their children died in large numbers as well. So I think Mother Jones, we remember Mother Jones, and we remember the tribulations that her generation of immigrants had to cope with. I also remember the contribution of Irish women to America. Ireland was very unusual as an immigrant nation in that young women often traveled to America alone in their teens and had to make a life for themselves here in this country. Now, Mother Jones wasn't in that category because apparently she traveled with her father to America. But nonetheless, there was a huge outflow of young women from Ireland in the decades after the famine. And of course, they faced a double disadvantage in being from an immigrant community that wasn't always popular, and being women and therefore not having the same rights as their menfolk. And I think it's a great thing to be able to remember Mother Jones, an example of an Irish woman who fought for the rights of men and women in the society in which she lived most of her life here in the United States. And so I'm very happy really to recognize the contribution of Mother Jones, her contribution as an example of Irish immigrants and their contribution to the United States, an example of the tribulations which people of that generation, those generations, had to endure, which may indeed put our own troubles into some perspective. And to think of the kind of life that she had to live and the kind of suffering she endured, and to come out of all of that and to become a warrior for the rights of those who had to work in mines and whose conditions needed to be improved for their own sake and for the sake of American society at large. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak about Mother Jones. I plan to write about her. I've been planning it for about a year or more since I met you in the cemetery in Illinois. But I now that I've attended this event, I think I'll get down to writing something not just about Mother Jones, but about some of the Irish women who contributed to the development of America in the second half of the 19th century. Thank you very much.
Thank you.